Rolling. Stop it. We're live and live.
All right, so we're going to
Rolling.
start with our camera.
Stop it. We're live and live.
All right, so we're fine as long as still top our camera.
Stop it. We're live and live.
I will first start off by, all right, so we're fine as long as still top our camera.
Stop it. We're live and live.
I will first to our guests and our audience, and I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. I will first to our guests and our audience, and I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. I will first to our guests and our audience.
Film photography is the main thing. I do a lot of consulting, programming, everything movies related. So that's what I do.
All right. I'm Wendell Brown, professor of art, director of museum management, Founders Gallery at Penn College, and part of that, more so over. I'm a fiber artist. My medium is textiles, and I'm gonna just say this. I'm also a former assistant to the American artist Cre8 who just died yesterday. So
What? Really? Oh my gosh. Wait, I wish you said that to the end.
sorry.
That's actually like really making me extremely sad. Wow. Okay. My name is Curtis C. Padron. I am the founder, executive director of the theater, micro cinema. We're a traveling micro cinema that brings black film, black cinema to black neighborhoods. And we do that up and down Eastern Seaboard. We are here based in South Carolina. I also do a wide variety of things. Also a filmmaker, recovering photographer. And it's intended to dress a lot more professionally or at least confident in something, but I also do take on way too much, as so many of us multi-hyphenates do, as well as voluntary set up for a race that's taking place here in Northeast Columbia. So that's why I'm in this kind of gear, but I miss this, so I'm here. So thank you, man.
We're good, man. Don't worry about it. My mic extra loud. You
just project.
I'm already loud anyway. Mike Murray, founder and manager of the Playlist LLC, founder of New Growth. I do poetry, I do photography, dabble in filmmaking, although I'm not as good as Thaddeus over there. Heavy on the recovering photography thing. My focus more so on art sustainability lately, giving artists spaces to exist, as well as giving them resources and hopefully funding sometimes to just be their whole selves outside of their art and everything.
So we're going to jump right into it. We know that grant writing can be kind of intimidating, whether it's you're applying for the first time or just receiving rejection. So what are some common pitfalls in crafting a grant proposal that you guys have encountered over the years?
I guess I'll start since I have the mic. Common pitfalls. I actually wrote like the main pitfall is not being clear for the grant that you are seeking. Or actually, no, before that, the most important one is not actually knowing what type of grant you want to pursue. That's the most dangerous, actually, because if you don't pay attention to the details, if you just get excited, like, okay, this is a great opportunity, which does happen, and that's real. So work with that, right? But make sure you read the details to make sure that, number one, you are eligible, to make sure you're eligible, and that this is a grant that's made for you. Because depending on the grant, it could be tons of work that go into every aspect of it, from just the, I mean, we're talking about proposals, but just for the proposal part alone, to the reporting part. Sometimes the reporting part is worse. So this is after the reporting part, just to be clear, is what your grant is actually running, and it's there or at the end or after it is complete. You usually have to do a report, and sometimes that can be more grueling than the actual grant application. I actually ran into a problem with that this week. It wasn't even with the reporting, it was something along those lines. I thought I read all the details I was supposed to read, and I didn't, and I've been doing this for a while. So, I mean, you can get caught up. So, to me, that's actually the biggest thing, is not reading those finer details, making sure that this grant makes sense for you to do.
I would just go back and add to what you're saying. I agree. We could actually get there because it is about the details. And I know years ago I was with the National Park and Planning Commission, and one of my jobs then was looking at applications that came in for a certain type of grants that artists wanted to have. One of the first things that we did, even before we even got to looking at the application itself, was to look for the mistakes. And that's where we, right off the top of the line, we discard those. And then after you got rid of all the mistakes, then you actually had the pile of applications that were somewhat ready to be looked at. But even in that pile, you're still going in and looking at, as you said, the details. Each line, and one of the things that Jemiah and I were talking about a few minutes ago, is that each grant application or each thing that you apply for is different. Even though they may seem similar, and you can say, well, I already have that together, I can just put that in and apply for this one. It's already done, it's different. And it's those little lines, line 1, line 2, line 3, and they may have, in line 3, they may have a line 3A, line 3B, C, D, and then they'll go to another line and it's something else. And then there's something else in a fine writing that you're not even paying attention to. Outside of all of those things, one of the things that I think is most important is to save yourself time in preparing the applications, so that let's say give yourself, and I do this for myself as well, haven't been somebody that look at grants. Before sending, give yourself a couple of days so you can sit it down with fresh eyes and come back to it and look at it again. That's when you're going to see some of the mistakes that you've made. Always, yes. And then when you really feel comfortable, pray about it, and then you can say it. That's my suggestion.
Very hard.
Yes, very hard. All right.
No, Mike, you want to go? I'll jump in real fast. No, you go ahead, Ben. You smarter than me.
I would, yeah, all right. I would say that one of the big things for me that when I'm reviewing grants or seeing grants is that their narrative doesn't really align with what they really want to do. And so a lot of times people spend very little time because they think they know what that narrative should be. And so they're just, word vomiting that thing together. And not really realizing that narrative needs to align with the way that you are going to do your reporting at the back end. And so if these two things don't match, while you have a complete grant, somebody who's reviewing it is going to go, this narrative, I might like the narrative, but it doesn't match what they're actually going to have to report for. And then I think that's one of the early stage problems, and then the other late stage problem is that after you get a grant, you still have not accounted for the actual reporting aspect. So you see people do things, they have their event, but no email addresses were taken, no contact information, no demographic information. And again, that just depends on what your stated purpose is and how you're going to be, because they're measuring, the effect of what you're doing. And is this money being spent well, and is this a return on that investment? And if you cannot actually produce that information, mind you, we're not talking about failure or success in that aspect of, and this is what people get caught up with, I didn't have a huge turnout, so it doesn't matter. No, that's actually why it matters, because we need to know the audience that was actually affected by the thing that you did. And is it a growing audience? Is it a trend that when you do something else that it's going to go up? Is it going down? And if you're working with a organization over and over, let's just say like the NEA, right? They're very forgiving as long as you are transparent. Being transparent about what it is that you're looking for, who the audience is, and when you are actually conducting the thing that you're getting granted for, it is the other big pitfall that they try to hide that information, like because they feel like it wasn't successful, it wasn't enough people, and that's not even, obviously we want successful turnouts and large events and things of that nature, but when you're dealing with grants, they have to spend this money. They are looking to see that, did you do the thing you said you were going to do, right? The amount of people that were affected, and then how are you, if you're going to do it again, how is that going to be, what have you learned from this event that you're going to do in the next event? So those are the pitfalls that I see people kind of overlook because they're so excited to get the money, right? Every time.
See, I gotta go last after everything they just said. Spot on about everything. I will say, everything they just said times 10 million. I'll touch on a part of the narrative that gets missed is, you focus on the narrative, but you don't really focus how the budget aligns with the narrative. The budget has to align with that narrative spot on. Everything you think, single thing you discuss in that narrative that you say you need money for, you need to see it in that budget. And only you see it in that budget, you need to do equations if you can. I tell people, if you say you need 500 canvases and the canvases cost $100 each, you really want to put $100, 500 canvases times $100 per canvas, the whole equation in the whole memo part. You'll know this in the whole spreadsheet. Literally spell it out like they're stupid, because they want to know how every single penny in that grant is being spent, and make that narrative. I think the biggest pitfall people have is they make it so flowery, and whimsical, and a whole. Like I say, they're trying to use the art through the narrative and trying to make it a whole story. You want to give a straightforward narrative that's engaging and tells somebody they should give you the money, but you don't need to do all this flowery stuff. But these people on these grant panels are probably reading 1,000 something, right now 1,000, 100 something applications. I remember the most I've read in one grant panel, man, it had to be a hot 100 and about 100 applications.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing for me when I'm reviewing on grant panels. You're looking at 100 different grants that might be same grant, different types of projects. And we are reading this information over and over and over, and so I hated to see 3 pages of narrative, and I'm going, I was about to say that. Come on, man,
dude.
Yeah, with that, exactly what they're saying. If it calls for, I don't know, 2,500 words, it doesn't have to be 2,500.
Please don't make it 2,500.
Please don't make it 2,500 words. Thank you. Actually, I don't even say anything past that.
So why do they say that?
They want to give you the space to be a little flowery, but not too flowery, just like Mike is saying. Just they want to give you that room, because you are going to make mistakes, and you're going to need to edit that out. You're going to need to edit, and so you have that room to make those mistakes. But then, once you do that final edit, you still have. Say you did get to 2,498 words. I've been there. We've all been there. You probably, once you did our final edit, get down to at the very least 2,000, 1,700 or something like that, and you'll be good. And it's tight and concise and still tells that story.
Think about when you invite guests to your house, you say, make yourself at home. You don't really want them to make
That's a perfect analogy.
You don't want them to sleep in your bed and nothing like that. Be comfortable, but don't be
just take my shoes off.
You know what I'm saying? You put it perfectly. Just straight to the point. Imagine yourself reading 100 applications over the course of a week. How much time do you want to spend reading those applications? And you only getting, if you're getting paid by a grant organization, they're probably paying you not a whole lot of money to read the applications. So just think about that.
I have a quick question off topic. So since you guys were on the grant panel, what about, like you said, paraphrasing certain narratives? Can you use AI, artificial intelligence, or would you recommend that or not recommend that?
Me personally,
No.
Everybody faces.
I would not recommend using AI. Here's the deal. AI is generated off of things that are already on the web and known. And that's number one. Number two, it's never right. You need to go back, and so it can be a great starting point, but it's still not going to be specific to your needs. It's always going to be something else, wide range. And then if you have to do that much work, just write what you want. Just write it yourself. And if you need help, find somebody that can help you. If you have the idea, but you don't know the words, get with somebody. And I'm trying to say this. How do I say this but be concise? Like, because I can sit with people and you'll hear them talk, and they talk all the way around the thing that they're really trying to ask for. And then you're like, okay, you boil it down. That's exactly the technique you need to have when you're doing narrative for grant writing. Boil it down to the right. I don't want to necessarily say the basics, but because it needs to be it needs to be interesting.
Yeah.
We read these and go, this is boring. This is watching paint dry. Like, this is right. Why would anybody come to this? And so you have to capture the excitement, but at the same time, we don't want to be like, Shakespeare. You take a whole soliloquy just to get to it's gonna be an outside picnic. We don't want to do that.
I was gonna say that. I don't know that. Just like make sure you're, applying for these grants with your best project in mind. Like put your best foot forward. Because panelists can know when you just try to get some money on some basic project that you don't really care about. But if you believe in your project, like the narrative should reflect that, and that's all you really need. As far as like the extra stuff. Like
Well, and that's one of the things that I find, particularly if the narrative is asking for, let's say, 1,000 words or 2,000 words. One of the things that I always do is it's your project, so your project shouldn't frighten you. So you know what it is that you want to do. So my thing is to first just jot those ideas down. Just jot them down. I want to do this. I want to do that. So that becomes the basics of the basics for what you're going to write. What I like about and usually when I start writing, I just start writing outside of the margins of how much they're looking for me to write. But the good thing for me, whether it's I was just doing something not too long ago that said 300 words, but whether you're talking about 300 words or 1,000 words, usually when I write about my thoughts and what I want to do, it's much more than that. But what's good about it being narrowed down and then giving you a reference to this can't be no more than 1,000 words or 500 words, is now it gives you have to really force yourself to really make clarity in what it is that it is actually you want to do. So oftentimes it's not, and you're not at 500 words, it might be 450, it might be 400, but your statement by that time should be clear. And you should feel it. You should say, this is exactly what I want to do. And that's always my approach to approaching it. But the first thing, don't be caught up in your sitting down to write, to say I have to write 1,000 words, because then you're focused on writing 1,000 words. That's not the content, and has nothing to do with what you're trying to do. Write it all down. When you finish, you might have 2,000 words. You might have 2,500 words. And now your task is to set it down. One of the things that I always like to do is to set that paper down, come back to it, and now I can narrow it down to, maybe if I have 2,500 words, now I can narrow it down to maybe 1,500. And then you come back and now I can put it into 500, and now let me narrow it down again, maybe it's 800 when it's finished. But then it's precise and exactly what it is that you want to say. It should be, anyway. Yeah.
So how can artists or creatives build relationships with art-focused funders beyond the proposal or the grant?
Well, I'll start since for me, I think one of the projects, I just finished being on the board of the Columbia Museum of Art here. It's a 7-year term. Now I'm on another board with a dance company here. So for me, one of the, or wherever I have been, I have always sought out to build relationships within organizations, whether it's with the city of Columbia, whether it's with other institutions, places in Maryland, and all these places. That way you're beginning to build relationships with inside organizations, and establishing relationships within those organizations, establishing relationships with people who write grants, who understand funding, and because you're going to funding meetings, you're going to all these type of things, and you are building those relationships so that when you leave, you have an established relationship. One of the things that that you talked about, I think, is one of the other questions down the line. I think it was Kevin when you were talking a few minutes ago. You were talking about looking for grant writers. Grant writers, in my experience, grant writers are contractors. You know, so in the same way that we want money, they want money as well. So they're not as free to give up their service to say, "Oh, you want a grant? You want me to help you write the grant?" You know, that comes with a cost, and it also comes with building a relationship. Oftentimes for me, to have those relationships have grown out of a relationship of having worked on a board, having worked on a commission, having worked with other organizations, and building long-term relationships, not relationships just to get in because I want a grant writer, but building lasting relationships. Like, Tamaya always get mad at me, you know, because she was one of my first students at Benedict when I came in. So she always says, "Stop telling that, Mr. Brown." But it was, but this is a relationship, because this is a relationship that I know I can call on Tamaya to do things, and whatever she asks me, I'm like, okay, I'll do it. You know, so those are long-lasting relationships that when you are looking to build things and to do things, those are resources that you can actually build into and make happen. Yeah.
I was gonna say 100%. Curtis, you want to go first?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I go real fast. Everything you just said, I would say my main two things are getting your art out in public as much as possible. And don't wear yourself thin, but you know what I mean. Like, if you see an opportunity that you fit the description, you know, it's your style of event, like, get your work out there. Especially if it's a free exhibition that you can just join and just get it out there, because you don't know who's looking at that art. There's so many times that people have seen my photography at shout out to Taps, man, RP Taps. They see my art at Taps, and they'll see my name, and then they'll see me, you know, they'll go to these events. You know, come in if you feel like a celebrity, you know everybody in town. They'll hear your name and see you at the event, and they're, "Oh yeah, I saw your thing at the And that's just all types of connections there. But also, man, how many people in here have served on the grant panel before? Got one? What's the so-so? You been on the half grant panel?
I work for a funding organization, so like, yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You see what Connie said.
Okay, you said, okay, so you see this. But I'm talking about, like, you've seen, like, a grant organization that you're interested in, and you've asked to be on their grant panel. Get on the grant panels, y'all. Get on the grant panel. I don't care what it is, especially if it's one you want money from. But if it's one that's just like out here, especially if they're paying, which all of them should pay you something. But if you can sit on that grant panel, that's good.
I want you to explain what is the grant panel, because I don't know what that's.
So when you apply for a grant, there's a panel of people who review your application. And what's usually the usual structure is, you know, they all grade it, you know, with their personal, you know, so say I'm a panelist, I go through it by myself, I read through it, I grade it on the scale. And a lot of organizations that everybody's reviewed the applications, they come together and they kind of like compare grades and everything. So whoever has the highest grade, they move on. Some organizations do like, do you vote they should get full funding? They vote on that. You vote they should get partial funding? They do vote on that. You vote they should get no funding? They vote on that. But it's you get to be on the team who gets to decide other people's fate for grants, basically.
What kind of qualifications do you have to get on the grant panel?
You just
Just
gotta
request it?
A lot of the organizations, yeah, you just ask them, can I be in your grant panel?
Okay.
They're looking for, they are actually looking for people that are everyday people to review grants, because remember that these grants are going to be used in communities. And so when people review grants and they don't understand, they're getting the boots on the ground aspect of like, okay, you read the grant proposal, how did you feel about it? Oh, I didn't like it, or it's also very like, well, what didn't you like about it? Because you can't just say, well, I don't like that, or it's in a blind almost. You see all of their information and how they're trying to put it out. A lot of times there's videos that come along with it, along with the narrative, depending on what organization, funding on your organization you're on a panel for. And so you see all the materials, and they're asking you basically, does this make sense to do? Are all the things aligned? Did anything jump out at you? They're not asking you to critique it from a artistic perspective. Like, they're just asking you, what do you think? And then they get a bunch of you together, and sometimes they'll review, like, okay, we've got the top 5, and here's what you thought. Everybody says what they thought about this one thing, and well, now let's vote on it. If we only have enough to give partial funding, would you give this organization partial funding? Yes or no, right? And so that's a powerful place to be for, I think, for what Mike is actually alluding to, is that when you get ready to do yours, that is valuable information for you to have, because you know what the process is like.
Exactly.
Right? And you know that it's going to be somebody like you that's reading that grant. So that will also help you in your narrative, right? Because one of the things that was one of the hardest things for me in writing was writing to a certain grade level. And so there's a scale. When you are working on a higher level education degree, they make you write at a higher, at a particular grade level, right? If you are above that, they make you do it again, right? So if I wrote a paper that said that somebody has to have an advanced degree to understand this paper, they make you do it again. They want you to be able to communicate clearly and in plain language, because the majority of people that will be reviewing this, of these grant proposals, are not high level degree obtainers. They are regular everyday people. And if you throw in them big, $10 words, they'll be like, I don't even know what that is. So keep it plain. I lost my train of thought. This is how it happens when you get old.
Oh!
I just want to add one more quick thing, because
Everything they said is stimulating to some point. Although you could put in a couple of big words. I don't mind doing that. But I would also, alongside the panels, attend the events of these funders. Funders have events all the time. All the time. Sometimes free, sometimes not. But try to attend some of these and get to know them and get to meet them. It's literally that simple, putting a name to a face, or establishing a name and a face. And if you can't attend, email them. There's a reason why their emails are are very public, because they want you to they suggest you reach out. I can't say they want, because everyone gets email glut, right, to be real. But they are there for you. So reach out to them. And before you apply, reach out to them. Let them know that you're applying. My name is blah, blah, blah. I belong to X organization. And you could have a question that would help. If you have a specific question, even if you kind of know the answer. Because they can elaborate, or they can actually provide that real clarity for you. Maybe you thought you knew the answer, you didn't. So have a real question, actually, and ask them, and not something extremely difficult if it doesn't have to be, just so you can establish a relationship with them. And then they will be looking for your application.
I remember what I was going to say now. This person, dad brain. Volunteering at they often have events that they are looking for people to do and show up and do different things, right? So volunteering, to the original question of how do you start building these relationships with arts organizations? Find an organization that aligns with your goals, somebody that you really want to support. Volunteer. Give a little bit of time. And I'm not saying you have to go and go all in. Go up, show up to an event. Help set up a table, help set up some chairs, talk to somebody in charge, right? Let them know your name, introduce yourself. But that goes a long way with arts organizations. We talk about Alternate Roots. There's opportunity there to volunteer and get to know people. So that's the number one thing I would say if you're trying to start building relationships.
Okay, perfect. What are some things that you guys want to have in ahead of time? Maybe like letters of support before applying for a grant.
Okay, go ahead. I would say real quick, timelines, I think are underrated. If you can basically put in your narrative timeline of your project as if it's already done, one of the biggest amount of money I've ever got in my life from grant is I had the whole timeline for the entire year laid out completely. You don't have to be over elaborate with this thing. You can just literally put January, put together, contracts, gather funders, whatever they got, March, send out emails to attendees, what I'm saying, just basically pinpoints in your whole timeline of your project as if they can see the entire project from beginning to end in that one little snippet. I'm telling you, y'all, that's the thing is killing, because that builds confidence in that you already know what the project is going to be and what it's going to look like and how it's going to be executed. And so you line the narrative with the budget with that, very underrated.
I said, to piggyback off of that, you said letters of support, those are great, but if you can actually have the person or person of contact that is going to be working with you on a particular part of that grant, included, and it's needed for the budget anyway, especially if they're being paid, right, or in kind. All of that stuff should be worked out before you even attempt to, because I've seen a lot of grants come through. It's like we're trying to get such and such, and we have and they are laying out. They have a contact, they have a way in, and they have access to this person, but they don't have a confirmation. And so confirmation is great. So if you have a name attached or organization attached, a letter of support is great, but confirmation is even better.
That is good. That also definitely depends on the grant.
Yes.
If you're talking about something like if you're a 501c3 and you want to apply for like an EA grant, that's so far ahead of certain time. And not to say you can't have that letter of support or letter of intent or whichever, but it can be difficult to get that so early on, as opposed to something like if you're applying for a grant like South Arts, and something like they have different levels, but say this their presentation grant, which the timeline is a little shorter, or their express grant, which is even shorter than that, hence in the word, where you definitely would have that, or have to have that. Then that shifts, but it's very helpful to have that. I am very adamant these days, especially in the past couple of years, about making sure I have a checklist, which doesn't go into the grant, but it helps you keep aligned with what you're trying to do with your grant. So just having that in place, it's kind of like the timeline in a manner of speaking. It's a fleshing out of the timeline, actually. So yes, the timeline 100%. But that checklist helps to keep you and your volunteers and your staff accountable for all the work you're trying to do. So that's the works best for me.
Okay, and one last question before we wrap up. How do you handle rejection with a grant and being able to have the courage to apply again, or following up with the grant? And I'll ask Mr. Brown to.
Why you go there first?
Yeah, because he told me a story. And I want you guys to hear a story. We only got 5 minutes.
Tell that story. No, I had. Well, the thing is with grants, as an artist applying for grants, I think you have those visions. I'll tell Paul. I'll tell 2 stories. Well, one of the grants I had applied for years. I applied for it for a number of years, and so the question was what again? The question is how do you deal with rejection? Okay. All right. I think somebody else want to go first. Okay, you go first. I will tell.
I am very familiar with rejection. I will tell you, take a day.
Yes.
Get all, because I'm an emotional person. So get it all out in a day. All right? Take that day. Take a long walk. Do whatever you need to do.
Feed the birds.
Feed the birds, right? Go outside and whack the tree, whatever it is that you got to do. And then come back inside and reevaluate. Look at the notes. see what people are saying to you about, because it's not often that they're saying this is a bad idea. They're saying you're missing something, and that something may be something you haven't really flushed out. And so I take rejection now as a sign of, okay, I'm just not fully ready here. I missed something. So let's go back and reevaluate what it is I missed. Rather that is, am I too high in the sky with this budget? Am I missing, what do they say, missing the forest for the trees, right? Because I'm too focused on one particular thing in this that I'm not seeing the big picture, right? Or is it the opposite? Am I just seeing the big picture and I'm not focused in? Like, a lot of times it's little tweaks that you can make to your grant that when you read the notes, you're like, okay, I see where the disconnect is. They're not rejecting me personally, even though we might feel like that in that moment, right?
That's day one.
Day one, you take that day.
Minute
Yes.
one, yeah.
I can't believe they. What?
Yeah.
Oh no! Like, yeah, you're really upset about it. Take that time. It's natural to feel that way, but then come back to it. Get some fresh eyes on it, and then find somebody you trust. All right, find somebody that you trust, and say, listen, I applied for this. The organization actually will give you that information a lot of times. You can reach out to them, contact them, and say, hey, I'm just looking over this, and I see I didn't get approved for this grant. Is there any way I can get some notes on, what really pushed the needle one way or another? And they are happy to give you that information.
I would say, speaking of those notes and not taking it personally, that's the key thing. Especially, we artists, we sensitive and everything. Like, do not take it as a personal attack on your art. Separate I don't like to art separate themselves from art. Separate the art from the grant, I would say. Because the grant is just opportunity, but the art's going to be there forever. Your art's always going to be valid, no matter what people say. But definitely separate yourself from that. But also, I would also say, one thing I had to learn was recognizing like a no, sometimes it's just like, not right now. And it doesn't mean that you weren't good enough. It just means you got, like, other people were just better in this particular time. And I'll give an example of this so y'all know I'm not BSing. Savor Arts has that cohort, what is it called again? The Young Leadership. I forgot the name I'm talking about here. It's like Young Emerging Artists. Yeah. I applied for it. I mean, I spent like days on that grant because I wanted to be part of the thing so bad. And I got rejected, devastated. And then not only did I see, and this is nothing, see who got the grant, and not compare yourself, but just see what they did to get the grant. But also leave yourself open to those comments because later on I got an email later that year where they asked me to reapply because I just got beat out basically. Like, it wasn't that I wasn't good enough. Everybody was just balling. You know what I'm saying?
Oftentimes it's what they're looking for at that particular
That's what I'm
time.
saying. Exactly that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dad. That's exactly it. So that just wasn't my time. But the next year was my time. And man, sometimes it's just not right now.
Yeah, I use that phrase all the time, especially as an artist. No, this needs to go right now. But I would say you don't always get notes, and not every organization, depending on what grant you're on for, is going to give you notes. But real talk, 8 times out of 10, you know why you messed up. It's like in everything you do. Like, you're trying to make a lasagna. You didn't get the right cheese or whatever. You only had American cheese. And you're like, it's bad. That's not a personal analogy. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, you know why you messed up. 8 times out of 10. Not always. Sometimes it's like, what happened? But 8 times out of 10. I know this happened to me recently. With a grant, very specifically. Where I just know my budget wasn't looking right. And I kind of knew that. But we had to get it out. Not had to. We chose to. Because we didn't have to apply, to be real. Well, we kind of had to. You know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't the end of the world. But I knew my budget probably could have been a little tighter. Could have been a little more right. And when we didn't get it, I was like, that was it. And on a similar grant that we applied for that we're waiting for now, really tighten that up and hopefully we'll get it. It's just, you really know. You usually know. So just be real with yourself. What everybody else said was really on point. Let's be real with yourself and take that time and reevaluate. especially if you don't get the notes and look through. And and definitely get some help. Get somebody that you trust to look it over. If you don't have a grant writer, it's just someone who has some sense.
Okay, all right. So I agree at a level. I agree partially with everything that you said. One of the there are two stories. I'm gonna start with one. My niece is a photographer. Her degree is in photography, and one of the things a couple of years ago that I had mentioned to her is that I want to work with you to get grants, so then you could jump off and do your own thing. So we actually applied for one. We worked on it for maybe about a year. We knew a year ahead of time that we were going to apply for this, so we worked a year ahead of time. And it was tight. It was. Yes, it was on point. And we never heard back from the organization. It was an organization in Atlanta that funds every year. So we never heard back from anything in reference to the grant. I'm represented by a gallery in Atlanta. So one of my shows that was up in Atlanta at the time, my niece was there, and a lot of people there, and we come across this lady who was really interested in my work. So I introduced her to my niece, and we're having a conversation, and she said, "Oh, I have this organization that we fund every year." She said, "We pick who we want. If we know them, we're going to pick." So I said, "So what's your organization?" It was the same organization we applied for. So, it's not always that your application is not correct.
Yes.
So my niece, as a response to this, was able to hook up with them directly. So that's one thing. So that's one other side. The other flip side of that is for my own work. It was with one of the things that I say about grant writing and applying for things is that, especially the first time that you're not going to get it, go back and look. And I always say that it makes your work better. And then go back and apply again, and then maybe not this time, but apply. But this one last time, I knew my work was on point. Everything was on point. And I went back and looked at who won, who didn't win, who were runners up in all these areas. It was a major, substantial award. And I told them, I was like, your application says that you are looking for these things. None of these things fit into those categories that you said you are looking for. These are the same things that people have been doing traditionally throughout time. What's the difference? So you need to go back and change what your statement in terms of what you are looking for, because it's clearly not that.
Yeah.
So the next time it came up, I applied and I'm in. Mm-hmm. So sometimes what you're doing is off. I know that the budget is off. I know this was wrong. I know I could do this better. I know this time. But sometimes what you're doing is right. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to make that statement, because clearly in their mission statement, if that is what they say they are looking for and that's not what they are selecting, you need to call them out on that. You have to hold them accountable in the same way that they're holding you accountable.
Stand up for yourself.
And then again with my niece, oftentimes with these grants and organizations, I'm thinking of going back to the other question about networking. That was clearly a way of understanding the importance of networking, because outside of being able to network, or my connection with the gallery that represents my work in Atlanta, outside of that connection, my niece wouldn't be in that. Nobody in here would be in that. Because number one, nobody in that who had gotten an award, a lot of them didn't look like me. So it puts you in that whole other whole other atmosphere of conversation. So it's about so sometimes, yes, I agree with this. Okay, I didn't do this, but not all the time. Sometimes you did everything on point.
Well, it goes back to who you know.
And who you know.
Right.
That is why I said 8 times out of 10.
8 times out of 10.
Right. But I'm absolutely glad you said that, because that is 10,000,000% on point, because you do something. You gotta call these cats out sometimes.
Right.
You really do.
Absolutely.
And not be afraid to do it, because it's like, listen, they already rejected you.
Exactly.
That has happened to me in this space in Columbia. Prior to I won't name the organization. So prior to becoming and working with an organization, I attended one of their meetings, and they were touting how they are really trying to work with local artists and really trying to find this, but they're not seeing anything here. And I was so mad in that moment. I was like the guy, you lied, but I stood up. I stood up, and when they started taking questions, I said, I heard you say that you're looking for X, Y, and Z, but I can tell you 20 filmmakers in this city right now with everything that you're talking about, but you're going and picking someone out of Atlanta. And you could see their faces just kind of drop, and I'm like, well, when it comes down to it, they're gonna do as much as you let them get away with. And yes, you it's all about who you know, but it's also about what you will stand for. And a lot of people are worried about burning those bridges because they want to make sure that people like them. And I'm here to tell you that it doesn't. Yes, you want people to like you, right? But it doesn't work well if it's not you they like. If that makes sense, you need to be you. No matter what, right? And that doesn't mean you go and cuss people out. That just means there's a tactful way. Sometimes somebody needs good cussing out. You know what I mean? But there might be a better way, a more tactile way to handle it, right? And so, I've experienced that firsthand, and I will tell you that if it burns you in your soul that it's wrong. You did what you know your work is right. You know your budget's right. You went by the guidelines. You can be respectful in saying, I don't think you chose based off of what you based this grant proposal on. You can be respectful and say that and get your point across without being like, listen, your organization is trash, right? Unless the organization is trash. That's that. Then it's appropriate.
Well, that's going to wrap up our panel discussion. Can you guys tell us your Instagram, how people can follow you or stay in contact with you?
Sure. I am Fanatic Productions on Instagram, at Fanatic Productions everywhere, just about. And yes, because it's not spelled properly. It's FANATIK, and Productions is spelled normal. And yeah, that's me. All things film.
Yeah, I think one of the questions on this paper that you didn't ask is how has this whole process changed over the years? And one of them is Instagram. Yeah. This whole social media process. I think in my in the early days we used to have to put things in the mail. You had to put a stamp on it and collect information and copy.
You really telling our age right now, right?
And it had to be postmarked by midnight.
By midnight, yeah.
That was
like 5-7 years ago.
That was the early days. So now it's Instagram and Facebook and those type of things. So so it's still fairly new to me in a certain way. But my Instagram is, I think it's George Brown, Wendell George Brown Fiber Studio. And that's my Instagram. And actually, you can pull that, pull a lot of other stuff as well. So.
How do you spell that?
WENDELLGEORGE Brown Fiber Studio.
Mine is pretty easy, but I'm going to spell it too, just in case. You can find everything that I do in my organization, the Luminal Theater, at Luminal, LUMINAL, Theater with an ER, not with an RE, so THEATER, at Luminal Theater, and we're at luminaltheater.org online.
Very nice. I'm at the playlist on Instagram. That's spelled PLAYLIXT. Because I gotta be weird with it.
Is the word the in it?
Yeah, the playlist.
Say that again. PAT.
PLAYLIXT, not ST, but XT. Michael Murray on Facebook. I don't spend a whole lot of time on social media, but I will check my DMs. Definitely trying to save my sanity.
Right.
I do want to shout out that we are doing free group therapy for artist sessions right now. The link for that is in my Instagram as well. If you go to my Instagram, you see it at the very top. Completely free, and I feed people. Shout out to Celeb Studios for catering a lot of those events as well. That's not Alternate Roots. That's all us. Alternate Roots did fund it before though. Shout out to Alternate Roots. But right now we trying to get the money ourselves. Money don't run out. But the link is in the bio. Please register. We'd love to have y'all. Thank y'all for the good information y'all shared today. Thank y'all for caring enough about yourself to be here.
Go ahead and wrap it up. We also want to thank you guys that are watching on YouTube. This is our first time doing a live stream. So if you are tuning in and you like the feedback, we should let us know so we can do more of this. And thank you guys for all coming. How much time do we have left? Do we have time to do anything else? Very little time because we have a parade to make. So thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.